podcast. This is episode 88. 88 for Dale Earnhardt Jr., maybe. Hello, everybody. I'm Ryan Sir, along with Don Helbig. Don, how you doing today?
I'm doing good. How about you, Ryan?
I was sick over the weekend. It kind of ruined my weekend, but I'm starting to feel like better now. So it kind of puts you in like that super hyped mood that you're just grateful for not coughing and wheezing and stuff like that. But yeah. So I'm doing well. To answer your question, I'm doing well.
Oh, that's good.
All right. Yeah. So just to remind everybody, you can find us on all your favorite podcast apps, Apple, Google, Spotify. You know the drill. Don, what do we got going on today?
Well, special guest. Very excited to have him back on the Attraction Group podcast. We'd like to welcome Andrew Stillwell. You might know him from Coaster101.com. Andrew, how you doing?
I'm great. I think this is the third time I've been on you guys' show. My first time without a floral or Hawaiian print type shirt. So I think we've approached friend of the pod status where I don't necessarily have to dress up for you guys. But
yeah. We've actually changed our company culture, and now we're just business casual. So Don still wore the Hawaiian shirt, but he's also the boss, so he kind of has to set an example. But thank you for settling the debate. Don and I were at a Reds game last night, and he was trying to tell me you had only been on twice. But I
was thinking twice, but then after Ryan said 3, I'm like, well, maybe it was 3.
Yeah, it was 3 because you were on the first time, and then after you were on, remember I harassed you on Twitter because you'd never sent me a hat, and I kind of made up that you were going to send me a hat, and you sent me a hat, and I wore the hat for the second episode, so that would make this number 3.
Yes, this is 3. So it's been twice in the past, but we are 3. There's no hat. We'll forgive that this time. We're good. The hair's looking good though.
Although, thank you. I actually was planning on getting a haircut today, but I didn't have time. We are business casual, but we are still kind of old school in the fact that we're not allowed to wear hats into the office. So
I don't want kind of messes with my hair if I wear a hat, though.
That's true. Plus, you get that tan line.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's not a good look.
Okay, so Andrew, you run Coaster101.com, right?
I don't run it. I'm fortunate to be part of a team. There's about 8 of us who were involved in the site. The guy who operates the site, he does all of the back end site work that I don't necessarily want to do, is John Stevenson. So John started it, I think 18 years ago, 2005, which would be 19 years. Wow. So we've been on our little small corner of Coaster Internet Island for about 20 years. But yeah, there's 8 of us, and then we've got a kind of a rotating cast of contributing writers and guest writers and things like that. But to say I run it, I appreciate that. I mean, I do host our podcast. I produce the podcast. I edit the podcast. And I do some writing and articles here and there and some recurring series on Coaster 101. But I think more people, because of the podcast and the fact that I'm kind of active somewhat on social media, they understand me. And I've been on, you guys' show, and I've been on a couple other podcasts. And so people know me and my voice maybe more than the other guys. But I think the thing with Coaster 101 is we're so happy to be in the background and the periphery and not at the forefront of everybody's, how do I want to put this delicately, business on social media. So it's like, yeah, Coaster 101, they do good work. If you enjoy the written word, and I know we as a society are pivoting more towards video, audio, snackable type content, but we're pretty proud of the work we do at Coaster 101. And I think it's cliche to say our work speaks for itself, but the work kind of a lot of times does speak for itself.
Ryan and I mean, we both really enjoy the content that you put out there, enjoy the articles, the different types of content that you do too. There's a good variety of it. And one of the things that I really enjoy is around this time of the year, you always do the Coaster 101 Park Mania. So how did that go this year?
Yeah.
And kind of take us back to the origins of this. How did it get started?
So I think this is year 8 we've done this, and I've been with Coaster 101 just about 10 years now. So I started it kind of as back when regional parks were not a lot of them are opening earlier and earlier. To me, it was kind of like one last hurdle during the off season. It was like, we're almost there. You get through the March turn, the March Madness, whatever we're allowed to say, trademark content, the March basketball tournament. And then theme parks are open. And so I kind of had this idea back again 8 years ago at this point, and we called it that first year Park Madness. And we were using words like Final Four and Elite Eight and all these trademark phrases. And so the year after that, it became Park Mania, because mania is a synonym for madness. But if if you're taking a look at this, can see this on the screen. And for those listening to the audio feed, go to the YouTube channel, check out Attractions Group on YouTube and see what I'm talking about here. In recent years, we've kind of taken a, let's say, creative license with some sort of an NCAA Final Four logo. This happens to be very, very similar. I don't want to say we knocked it off, but it's very similar to the women's NCAA Final Four logo this year. But we started by ranking the parks, and then nobody likes it when you rank their park 16th. So the last couple of years, we've done it kind of random draw. We did it geographic regions for a little bit, but the last couple of years, we've just done random draws, and we put it out to the parks we email them, let them know, but we put it out on social media. And it depends on what parks are willing to kind of take the ball and run with it. You would think a park, like I'm looking at this graphic, Magic Kingdom, for example, they've got Walt Disney World has millions and millions of followers on social media, but they lost to Indiana Beach. Or again, Cedar Point, for example, it's become like a running joke almost on our end that Cedar Point has never won this. They've got an incredibly passionate fan base, but the parks that have won successfully in the past, we've had King's Dominion win, we've had Holiday World, Hershey Park. The first year, actually, Silverwood Theme Park won it, which was back in 2017, which to me, I had never heard of Silverwood Theme Park, but we put it in there, and they took the ball, they ran with it. And, Don, back in your past, Kings Island won it several years ago as well. But it's when the parks can take ownership, and they're not afraid to kind of step outside of the corporate line. I mean, I remember back, I think it was 2019 or 2020. It was Carowinds, and SeaWorld were they were matched up with one another, and Carowinds ended up winning that year because Carowinds took the ball and ran with it. And they were encouraging their fans to vote. And, this year's Park Mania, it actually came down to two, what I'm going to call sleeper picks, the NC State of the March Madness bracket, if you will. I'm sorry, they ruined my bracket. They ruined my ACC tournament. I got to bring them up. But, it came down to Indiana Beach versus Lost Island Theme Park, of all places. And, come to find out, both of these very, small, hyper niche regional parks, they have extremely passionate fan bases. And Indiana Beach actually won this back in 2022. And they're not afraid to rally the troops, rally the crows, as it were, to get their votes on social media. But yeah, Indiana Beach, we actually just published it earlier today, but Indiana Beach captured their second ever Park Mania title. About 65,000 individual votes were cast across all of the, I think, 6 rounds. What am I counting here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, 6 rounds. So about 65,000 votes. And yeah, we appreciate when the parks play along. It's as people say on our Facebook comments. 1, never read the comment section, but 2, I don't know what level I'm allowed to say adult language on this podcast, but it has been called bull excrement. It's close enough, right? Because
we know what you mean.
Yeah, good. I hope most people do. I mean, we're all adults here, but you guys might have, a family audience. But, it's like, it was, Lost Island beat Hershey Park, and everyone was up in arms. And Indiana Beach beat Silver Dollar City. And there was another one that was, like Glenwood Caverns advancing and Dollywood beating Kansas. Everyone has opinions. And then I say, you guys are at the mercy of fans who vote, theme park fans are extremely passionate about their home parks, especially when you're in, Monticello, Indiana, or Waterloo, Iowa, and that's what your pride is. Everybody has their favorite park, but these smaller family owned, or not even regional chain parks, they've got passionate fan bases, and if they're willing to mobilize those fans, we do send out a trophy. It's a nice laser cut wooden trophy that has this, again, creative license logo on it. But each park has who has won has been able to display that trophy. I know back when Kings Island won, they said it would be on the desk or be given to every full-time employee for like a day during the season. Or Holiday World's posted on social media. Carowinds has posted on social media. It's just fun. And that's really what we were going for when we started this 7 years ago. It was, um, you know, we're kind of bored. There's not a lot of news going on. And at our core, I'll be perfectly honest, just like everybody else, we want clicks, we want website views, but we want, people to have fun at the same time. Like, we're not going to throw a clickbait article at you, but we will throw a clickbait poll at you. Yeah. So, but it's just for fun. And, congratulations to Indiana Beach. I think we're going to, we'll have them on our podcast, and, we've developed a little bit of a conversational relationship with them over the years, just because they're like, hey, how are we doing? What can we do to pump this out more? So it's, again, at its core, it was meant to be fun. It's always been fun, but again, that's the industry we cover. It's supposed to be fun. So
I always had fun with it, when I was, doing this at Kings Island and trying to solicit the votes for us to advance in the tournament there with that. You're right. I mean, it is a lot of fun, and I always, enjoyed too seeing just how it would go. I would try to do my own little bracket, like off of yours, and try to like make my picks who I thought was going to win. I was never right.
No.
But also myself being competitive, working at a park, I would put that into it too. Like, I want to win, and try to get our fans and, engaged in this, and, get them participating in it. But I just think it's a great thing to do at that time of the year. Like you mentioned, everybody has already kind of announced what's new for that year. You're still waiting for a lot of parks to open. So the perfect time of year to really get your fans engaged with what you do there.
It's no USA Today 10 Best Awards, but we're trying.
Absolutely. Now, Andrew, just pivoting on, it looks like, especially this year, a lot of the parks are heading towards kind of a different function as far as roller coasters are concerned. We're seeing a lot more of family coasters, but when we say family coasters, we mean somewhat immersive theming and creative takes and stuff. What are your thoughts on that? And what are your thoughts on the fact that the trend right now is kind of leaning towards the type of product that, coaster enthusiasts like us would prefer something else, but families may like it?
You guys might take my enthusiast card here, but back in January, and I've been working on this kind of throughout the fall, because you started to see the announcements for coasters like Penguin Track at SeaWorld Orlando, and Phoenix Rising at Busch Gardens Tampa, and Good Gravy at Holiday World, Snoopy's Racing Railway that I will always want to call Runaway Railway, just because. You saw these were the announcements that kind of happened throughout the fall, and the announcement cycle, as it were. And as enthusiasts, we a lot of times we will gravitate towards those EST coasters, those tallest, fastest, longest, most, which isn't an EST, but mostest inversions. Like, excuse me. A lot of times that's what we want as enthusiasts. But, in doing the research for this article, it was, I think, as of January, and I'm sure there have been more coasters that have been announced since then, this was the highest concentration this year of family coasters in the United States that had opened compared to every other coaster. And I think it was like 53% of coasters, 53% of coasters opening in the United States this year were family coasters. And I actually talked to Adam Sandy, who have you guys had him on your show?
We have not yet.
Okay. He's a good guy. Great guy. Obviously, he is the roller coaster sales and marketing director for Zamperla. But at his core, he's also a dad of two young girls, like 12 and 7, I think his daughters are. So he gets to look at it from two ways. He's like, how do you keep the family together? And how do you keep them interested in the park when, traditionally the gap between like a 36-inch height requirement and a 48-inch height requirement, that's a solid foot. It's 1 foot to a whole 12 inches, if I can make a Jungle Cruise joke here. But there's traditionally there hasn't been anything in between. And I know these coasters, again, like the ones I mentioned, Penguin Trek, Phoenix Rising, excuse me again. I promise I'm fine. All these, family coasters, they're getting a demographic in the park who may or may not be there. And it's, for the progression of roller coasters itself, every park needs a stepping stone between something like Grover's Alpine Express at Busch Gardens, Williamsburg, before you go up to Invader or Verbolten or Dark Coaster. You need something in the middle. And Dark Coaster, I think, is a good example. It's one that's indoors. It's got those straddle seats that kind of resemble snowmobiles, but you need something to step up in the middle of the kiddie coaster and to keep that kid interested in bringing their parents back to the park. I'm sorry. I'm talking a lot, and that's what's happening, I guess. But you need that coaster that kind of keeps the family interested and that they can ride together and multi-generations can ride together. And I think as parks do this, one, it's easier on their bottom line and their budget. They can advertise a new ride, so it's coming, and it appeals to a wider audience. So not only can mom and dad and the teenagers ride, but the younger siblings can ride as well. And so creating those family memories. And again, please don't take my enthusiast card here, because really, when it comes down to it, all roller coasters, especially as we still emerge from a pandemic economically, all new roller coasters are good roller coasters. I don't care if it's an SVF spinner. I don't care if it's Top Thrill 2. If it's a new roller coaster, it means parks are investing. And if parks continue to invest, more guests will go. And then the cycle continues. So I'm really excited about these family coasters. And, if I have to look at one that I'm really excited for is it's Good Gravy at Holiday World. And Don, I know you're a huge Good Gravy fan as well. But the theming of this thing, the story, the gravy boat trains, it's got me planning a trip to Santa Claus, Indiana sometime in the near future. And as a 34-year-old, no kids, I'm not the target demographic for this coaster, but it just looks fun, which, again, I'm going to probably just repeat myself, but roller coasters are supposed to be fun. And it doesn't have to be a dragon wagon or a figure eight spinner. Parks are getting smarter, and they're bringing these stories and these new designs and these custom tracks to life. And it's just, again, it's an exciting time. And especially, when I eventually do have kids and become that family person, it's another way for me to get those kids interested in parks as well.
Andrew, I never got caught up in the statistics of rides. I mean, they look impressive on paper. It's a great marketing tool to say it's has the new record for the most inversions, most this, most that. But some of the best coasters I've been on have not been record breakers. They're not the tallest. They're not the fastest. They don't have the most inversion. They're just a lot of fun. So I think you and I think along the same ways when it comes to roller coasters. But you mentioned Good Gravy at Holiday World. Garnered a lot of attention. It's going to be North America's first Vekoma family boomerang roller coaster to open. It'll be followed by Snoopy's Soapbox Racers at Kings Island. These are just two of the new roller coasters by Vekoma opening this year. So talk about the role that Vekoma has been on the past couple of years.
You guys sent me some notes before we started recording, so I dug a little deeper, and I want to focus on the United States just because that's what I know, and I'm one of those classic American enthusiasts who's not very well traveled and haven't gone to any overseas parks. And I know Vekoma crushes it overseas. But I didn't realize that, since 2014, like there was a 5-year gap between Vekoma opening a new ride in the United States. It went from Seven Dwarfs Mine Train at the Magic Kingdom, and again was almost a full 5 years until Dragonflyer at Dollywood opened. And Dragonflyer is a ton of fun. Phoenix at Dino's Wonder Wheel. If you guys have been up there yet, I got to ride Phoenix. I rode in the front row and then I rode in the back row, and I was shocked how much I just enjoyed the heck out of Phoenix, a family-friendly roller coaster on a New York City boardwalk, and getting to talk to Dino Vidaris of Dino's Wonder Wheel. He happened to be operating the ride that day. We struck up a conversation. He became a podcast guest. It was really, really cool that the amount of love that they cared for that coaster. And then obviously you keep going. After Phoenix, it was Guardians of the Galaxy, which I think we're going to talk about here in a little bit. Big Bear Mountain at Dollywood, Tron at Magic Kingdom. And then, this year they're opening 4 coasters, and it's 2024. They haven't opened 4 coasters in the United States since 2008. And that was back in the days of Hard Rock Park. So you had two new Vekoma coasters there. So they've been on a tear a little bit in the United States recently. And, for years it was Vekoma had this reputation of the janky flying coasters, with no offense to Firehawk or Nighthawk or Batwing or whatever the other one was called. They're a little rough. They've seen better days. And the every enthusiast favorite, the Hang and Bang, the SLC, that was kind of their reputation. Those two and Boomerangs. And I think especially, and if we want to go a little bit overseas, I think Fly is another example as well of something that is just super hyper themed, has a great story, but it's one of those coasters you see and you're like, wow, I got to get over there and ride that. And I feel like Vekoma, especially in the States, this year with Vertical Velocity at Six Flags, or Flash Vertical Velocity at Great Adventure, Snoopy Soapbox Racers, as you mentioned, Good Gravy at Holiday World, and they've also got the Midnight Flyer going in at Santa's Village up in the Northeast. Like, they're good family coasters, with the exception of Vertical Velocity, which to me still looks insane. I haven't figured out anything totally about it yet, and I'm hoping, I haven't seen construction pictures or anything like that. I'm hoping it, stays on schedule. But yeah, I think Vekoma's, they're a little bit of a heater right now in the States. When you look at Big Bear Mountain, Tron, Guardians, and even Phoenix and Dragonflyer, I think those 5 coasters, you could put them in any park in America, and you would have a really, really good park.
Another coaster that's garnering a lot of attention, Fire in the Hole at Silver Dollar City. Talk about that.
So that's another one of these family coasters. And, shame on me, have not been out to Silver Dollar City ever. And it's on my bucket list. And I know that, you've had Dalton on your show. Dalton's their PR guy. I was actually listening to the episode with him fairly recently. And I've told him for years that I'm going to get out to Silver Dollar City, and I'm hoping this year is the year. Branson is just difficult to get to. But, we had, one of our guest riders, Danny, she and her husband went out, and she didn't ride because, I don't want to spoil it, but she happens to be pregnant. She's like, well, my husband can ride. So based on what I know about Fire in the Hole, which admittedly is not much of the original story, I know there's a guy named Red Flanders. He's missing pants, but everything I've seen that RMC was able to kind of put into this, this new Fire in the Hole 2.0, whatever we're going to call it, it's a perfect way for Silver Dollar City to continue that story. And I love the fact that they're embracing the history rather than build something new. They have they've continued the story, and it's the exact same layout, and they've just modernized it again for these new generations of grandparents who rode Fire in the Hole as kids can now take their grandkids on it. And it's just, I don't know. I really think Silver Dollar City hit a home run with this one. I can't wait to get out to Branson to experience it myself. I hate that I didn't get to experience the original, but that's what YouTube's for, right?
That's right.
Yeah, I mean, with YouTube, you don't have to go anywhere except it's way dope. I always like, yeah, we could debate this until the cows come home, but I always hate judging rides based off of POVs simply because you never really get the essence of a ride unless you've actually ridden it, especially watching the POV. But kind of pivoting here, not a family ride, Iron Menace. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
We gotta define real quick what a family ride is here, because I know it's kind of that sweet spot between 36 and 48 inches is not technically considered a family roller coaster. But Dorney Park came out this week and announced that Iron Menace, complete with its sideways loop and its Immelman and its beyond vertical drop, has a 48-inch height requirement, which
Mhm.
is to me insane. This is such a good thing for B&M to be able to do, to allow the park to run it at 48 inches. I think it again provides more accessibility for those families who have a stubbornly short preteen or old tall. I don't know how tall kids get. I'm not there yet. I was 48 inches tall one time and I kept growing and then I stopped. But I think Iron Menace, to me, the theming is amazing. They've given this coaster, as Cedar Fair has done in recent years, they've given it a fantastic backstory with this Hiram McTavish guy, who they think is related to the guy at Knott's. I think he's related to Duncan McTavish from Corkscrew Hill at Busch Gardens, Williamsburg. And there's this extended Snyderverse cut of the theme park space that we haven't really realized yet. But I really want to get up to Allentown this year. I haven't been to Dorney Park since I think 2013. It's been a good decade. And I haven't been just because they haven't opened anything new. And a lot of times that's what will get me to a park, is a new addition. But with the story, I love B&M dive coasters. I think these new 7-seat trains are going to be really special. To me, it looks like they've got the vest restraints, but they also have the vest restraint with the little bit of an extended belt, which sometimes you need. As someone of size, you need those belts. And you're again, the fact they fit a B&M dive coaster in a space that was formerly occupied by a Vekoma, good old Vekoma boomerang, just happens to be inverted. And I knew they used a little bit more of the surrounding area, but there's a dive coaster where a Vekoma boomerang used to be. And, as coaster enthusiasts, we should all be really thankful for that. But we should also be really thankful that they didn't just plop a off-the-shelf model coaster in a parking lot and call it a new coaster. Again, all new coasters are good, but when you can put a story and theming and elements behind it and have a 48-inch height requirement, Dorney Parks, they've got a winner on their hands here. And everyone's looking at Sandusky right now as the what's going to be the best new coaster of 2024. And realistically, I think if more people get to Dorney Park, and everybody's going to get to Cedar Point because that's what we as enthusiasts do, I think Dorney Park's got a sleeper hit on their hands this year in the coaster community. Maybe not something that'll crack like a golden ticket top 50 list, but it's got to be definitely top, without looking at a list of new roller coasters that are opening in the United States in 2024. It's got to be top 5, if not top 3 new coasters in the United States. So I'm excited for it. And I know the team at Dorney Parks, they put a lot of work into it. And the corporate theming team at Cedar Fair, they've developed this backstory. Again, I love it when a coaster can get a little bit of story, something like Copperhead Strike or Twisted Timbers and so on and so forth. But man, this one I'm excited for. So
I am too. I thought when they announced it, and I saw the renderings and just the backstory, that you're right. This is going to be the sleeper coaster of 2024. You know, a lot of times, you know, they're pointing out that it's not setting any records. It's not the tallest, fastest dive coaster or anything like that. It doesn't have to be one of the best.
It really doesn't. And you know, in Allentown, you're right in between the Philly Metro and the New York Metro, and you know, New York City. They've got, you know, the American Dream Mall. They've got Coney Island. Philly has got, you know, Dorney's close. Hershey's kind of close. Knoebels is there. But Dorney it's kind of in a unique situation. And I think it can draw from both those audiences. And I think it's going to it'll bring people through the gate. And it's a park for years that has just been ripe for expansion and ripe for a new coaster.
So you kind of mentioned where we wanted to go next as far as Top Thrill 2 at Cedar Point. I'm sure you've seen the POV of Tony and whoever else I was in there riding it. What were your initial thoughts? I know you mentioned Dorney's a sleeper hit. This one's guaranteed to knock it out of the park, almost. So what do you think?
I'm excited. I think Top Thrill 2, again, it's the coaster everybody right now is looking for. It's the, you know, they want to see how Zamperla can do it. They want to see how that backward spike is. They want to go back up and over that 420-foot tall top hat. What I'm not worried, but I really think that the problem is going to be for that everybody wants to be there. And fast lanes are going to be expensive. I know you can only ride it once with the fast lane, but they're going to be expensive, and the standby lines are going to be long, and everybody's going to want to ride it. The counterpoint to that is that while everybody's riding Top Thrill 2, you can go to Maverick or Steel Vengeance or Millennium Force, and you're not going to have as long of lines, which is, to me, is a win. So I hope to ride it at some point. I never got to ride the original Top Thrill Dragster, just due to the aforementioned size and Cedar Point's belts not being as, you know, conducive to the aforementioned size as I wanted it to be. So I never got to ride it. I've ridden King Ka, which has a different restraint system. So I've done it. I've gone up, 128 miles per hour in a coaster as opposed to 120. The thing that I'm most excited for with Top Thrill 2, and it's not just because our website is Coaster101, but it's that backwards 101 mile per hour launch. I don't think anybody is expecting that to be as good as it's going to be. Everyone right now is focused, oh, it doesn't go far enough up the spike. It doesn't do this. It doesn't do that, because everybody looks for something to complain about. I think that backwards launch at 100 plus miles per hour is going to be one of the most absurd feelings on any roller coaster anywhere. And that's, probably will top Pantheon at Busch Gardens with that reverse launch into a bunny hop, or bunny hill, whatever we want to call that, as just the most absurd feeling I've ever experienced on a coaster. And that's without riding any of these extreme spinners or anything like that. But the airtime felt in that backwards launch, it's going to be great. And then staring straight down that spike, you're not going to realize you're 2/3 of the way up the spike when you're looking straight down to the station. Like, you're going to lose your mind that you're, 300, whatever it is, feet up in the air, and you still have a 120 mile per hour launch in front of you. So I'm excited. Again, huge win for Cedar Point. I'm glad that, Top Thrill gets to live on and kind of have this new, again, they've got a story as well with the Top Thrill Racing theming. So again, new coaster, new story, really excited to see how it all pans out. Mainly geographical reasons, but you would not catch me anywhere near their opening day because, man, I just don't like lines. I can't. And the lines are going to be nuts.
Yeah, it certainly has attracted a lot of attention, and rightfully so. So in recent years, Walt Disney World, they've rolled out these after hours events at all 4 of their theme parks, and Typhoon Lagoon too, which takes place on select nights throughout the year. You had a chance last month to experience the after hours event at Epcot. Talk about that event, and do you feel that's the best way to experience Epcot?
Oh my gosh. I just mentioned like 30 seconds ago. I hate lines. I can't deal with them. I'm kind of a snob when it comes to that regard. So I happen to be visiting Walt Disney World in the middle of spring break. I was in town for a work conference, and so I knew my park time would be limited. I mean, I was there. Fortunately, my company had paid for my flight and hotel, so theme park tickets were on my own, obviously, and I didn't have a ton of time. But I knew that, especially at Epcot, I wanted to ride Guardians of the Galaxy. That was a coaster I had remained as spoiler free as I could. I knew very little about the queue. Every time I had seen something about Guardians pop up on TikTok, I was like, swipe, 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 get away from me. Just like, I don't want to know anything. I want to go into this completely blind. But I also knew I had to ride it. And it was one of those things. I had a night of this conference. It was right in the middle of the conference. The conference ended at like 6 o'clock or whatever. And it happened to be on a Thursday when Epcot was having after hours. And so the conference ended. I walked over to the back gate. The conference was at the Swan. And went over to the International Gateway, got in about 7 o'clock. The park closed at 9. The after hours event said it started at 10, but it actually started when the park closed. I was able to get as many rides that I wanted to get done that night in the middle of spring break with Epcot after hours, and I would have been waiting in line all day. I was looking at the app, and it was like Ratatouille had like an 80-minute wait, and Frozen had like an 80-minute wait. Mission Space had like, oddly enough, an 80-minute wait, and Frozen or Soarin' had an hour, and Test Track had 110 minutes, something like that. Just crazy, crazy things. And on top of that, Guardians boarding groups, if you're not in the park at 1 o'clock, which wasn't an option for me at the conference, they're gone. Like, you can't ride it. There's no standby line as of right now. So if you want to ride it and you have a ticket to the after hours, there's no boarding groups. You can, as soon as after hours starts, you go right up to the standby line. You go through, you see all 5 pre-shows, which my one gripe about that attraction is the pre-show, because there's so many of them and they're so long, and all I want to do is ride the ride. But you go up, you ride Guardians, you hop down the exit queue, you can hop right back in line, and there is no other way right now, to my knowledge, except for maybe a VIP tour, which I don't make that kind of money. But to me, the Epcot after hours, just to ride Guardians back to back was worth the price of admission, which I think was $160 plus tax, whatever Disney charges for these things. But again, it's limited crowds. I'm very confident that had I been at Epcot and had I had a plan of attack, and fortunately I've been to Disney World, dozens of times. I grew up in Florida. That's not a humble brag. That's just back when, tickets were like $40 a day when I was a kid, and they're not that anymore. But you can go. I could have ridden everything in Epcot if it was all open. If I wanted to ride everything, I could have done it between 7 and 1 a.m. when the park closed for after hours, or closed for the after hours event rather. So you get in at 7, you get in a couple hours early. I took on, the land and Journey into Imagination and the Seas, and I walked through the Moana, Journey of Water, which I have thoughts, but we're not going to talk about them. And then I saw what is their fireworks show now is Luminous. I knew it ended with Us, but it's not Harmonious. So I got to see that, and nobody does those late night fireworks displays like Disney. So it was really cool to see that. But as soon as that was over, you beelined it for Guardians of the Galaxy, rode that back to back, rode Test Track for the first time ever walking through the queue since they refurbed it. I mean, I did it back in the 90s with the original version, but the Test Track 2.0 before they closed it for 3, I'd never built a vehicle and never really had gone through that whole queue process. And because they let you do it in the single rider, but it's real quick and it's real abbreviated. And I did that. I mean, unlimited soda, popcorn, which I'm not a big popcorn guy, but I had a ice cream bar, but it gave me the freedom to kind of experience Epcot how I wanted to experience it. I didn't ride Mission Space. I could have ridden Frozen. I skipped Frozen. I actually was sitting on a bench in Epcot, believe it or not, watching college basketball that night because that's what you do in March, going back to the bracket conversation. And then my team lost. And there's no worse place to watch your team lose a basketball game than on a bench at Epcot where everybody's really happy. They're like, I get to ride Soarin' with no line, and I get to ride Guardians with no line. And here I am. I'm like, why did we lose to Alabama? And so I'm just like, I was frustrated, but then I got to walk on Ratatouille as I was leaving. And so I conquered pretty much all of Epcot. Spaceship Earth was down, which was a bummer. But that was the only thing I didn't get to ride that I really wanted to ride in that, I don't know, 5.5 hour time frame. And again, we're talking peak spring break crowds here. So I realize, again, this is not for everybody because one guy, I'm buying one ticket. I'm on my own schedule. I don't have kids. I didn't have anybody else to answer to. So it was great for me because I was on a time crunch and I wasn't going to get to experience Epcot and the rest of the park any other way. So the after hours ticket was perfect for me for that reason. And again, I got to ride Guardians twice in a row and I got 2 different songs. So I think I've got 2 of the 6, which is great. September was a bop. I just want to say with Earth, Wind, and Fire, I had that one, and then I ran by Flock of Seagulls. And September was my favorite. But again, I got to ride these back to back, which was nuts. And again, worth the price of admission alone because Guardians is that good.
Yeah. So, yeah, Guardians is that good. I can attest that it's cool. I think I had I've had September, and then I had One Way or Another. Who's that by? It's anyway.
It's not Blondie.
It's Blondie.
It's Blonde. I always want to say the Pointer Sisters, but it's not. But Andrew, I figured I always drink out of my Epcot cup when we do our show. But you mentioned you were in a bad mood because your team lost to Alabama, which that stinks. But why didn't you just ride Journey to Imagination with Figment and be in such a better mood? Because I love that little monkey.
I don't think we call him a little monkey. He's an animated little. We're not again. We
is
don't
he a
have
dinosaur or is he a dragon? I was having that debate with somebody.
Eric Idle says neither, and the word he says starts with F and rhymes with ducker. Sorry.
I love Figment. Okay, well, anyway, so moving along. One of the things when we talk about non-coasters and non-rides is, that we're getting an upgraded experience at Dollywood. I guess that does involve a coaster because of, Lightning Rod. But, speaking of something completely different from what we were talking about, the new Dolly Parton experience. What are your thoughts on that, and how do you think it'll impact the guest experience at Dollywood?
Okay, so I'm a terrible North Carolinian because Dollywood right now is 4 hours away from me. I live in the Charlotte metro, and I've been to Dollywood one time in the past 8 years, and that was last year. So I'm a terrible judge of Dollywood. But going back to John, who owns and operates Coaster101, he's from Tennessee, grew up going to Dollywood, loves Dollywood, loves Dolly Parton. He's been through the experience, and he told me it was fantastic. Or it's not open. Is it open?
Not open yet, under construction.
But there was a Dolly Parton experience there, but they're completely redoing it and expanding it. So if you like that experience, you'll probably really enjoy the new one, which is like interactive and stuff.
Yeah, I think so. And when we went, I went last spring, so right before Big Bear Mountain actually opened. So I kicked myself that I was there like literally the week before. We got to go through Dolly Parton's tour bus. And I think part of the draw of Dollywood for so many people isn't the rides, isn't necessarily the craftsmen. It is the cinnamon bread, but this is for a different reason. People just have this calling to Dolly Parton. And Dolly right now, she's crushing it. She's just been on a Pitbull song. Beyonce redid one of her songs. She's kind of having this like pop culture resurgence a little bit. Not that she ever left, but I think so many people have this like infatuation with Dolly Parton for one reason or another. That yeah, I think if you're going to name a park after somebody, it would be like having Disney World without Walt Disney One Man's Dream or the you know, something like that. Like if there's a park that is built in somebody's image or at least named after them, you've got to pay homage to them in some way. And I think if Dollywood does this like they do literally every attraction that they build, it's going to be a home run because they're going to do it right. There will be no expenses cut, no cost spared, just to ensure that great guest experience. So I think once it opens, once the new version opens, it won't get like lightning rod lines, but it will be probably maybe a little bit busier than Tennessee Tornado on a weekday afternoon, if that makes sense.
Maybe.
All right. We've got National Superhero Day coming up on April 28th. So what are some of your favorite superhero themed coasters?
So this is a great question. I appreciate you guys. I don't want to plug it, but Shane on our team, he actually just wrote an article. He ranked his top 10 superhero themed coasters, and I think he put Superman the Ride at Six Flags New England at his top. And it's not my top. I haven't ridden it yet. Again, short belts. One day Intamin and I will get along, I promise. But so I gotta go with Guardians of the Galaxy. It could be some recency bias. That was just so much fun. And to say a Disney roller coaster is as good as that is, I feel like is really a weird thing for coaster enthusiasts to say, but it is that good. And and this is coming from somebody who has not seen the Guardians movies. It's again, haven't been to Silver Dollar City, haven't seen the Guardians movies. I'm lacking in certain corners of pop culture here, and I apologize. But if it not Guardians, I gotta go with one of my original favorite coasters, the one that kind of was the coaster bug that bit me, was Incredible Hulk at Islands of Adventure. And I do want to differentiate here. I like the OG Hulk because I like the scene and the tunnel better. That's like the cartoon. I think this time it's going to work. Fluid levels dropping and the secret slime action siren. Like that was like my first big roller coaster experience. I'll always remember like getting on that ride and pulling into the brake run and like white knuckling. So that's what started this whole hobby for me. So now I've like roller coaster posters on my wall because of the Incredible Hulk. So even if it's not my favorite now, it's one that I will always have a soft spot for. And while we're here, I'm going to give you my least favorite superhero coaster experience. It was when Batman ran backwards at Six Flags over Texas several years ago. Those B&M coasters, the forces were designed to go forwards. And as you're taking on a vertical loop in reverse, and granted, you kind of get this with the Vekoma boomerang, taking on a vertical loop in reverse as your feet are dangling, it's not the most comfortable of ride experiences. And I swore I would never ride that again after one ride, just because it was something. But to me, it wasn't good. But that's, and what about you guys? Is superhero coasters are kind of are they your thing, or is there one that you want to ride that's like the Batman coaster that just opened overseas, Gotham, whatever it is? It's number one on that list, I think.
I was gonna pull it out. So Batman Gotham City Escape at Warner Brothers Warner. Sorry, what's the name of the park? Warner Brothers Madrid.
Yes.
Parque Warner Madrid. That's what it is. I was like looking at it in my head and I knew it wasn't right when I was saying it. But yeah, that looks like a really cool park. A really cool ride too.
It looks like almost like I think he made the comparison to Velocicoaster, and everybody loves Velocicoaster. Yep, there it is right there. Love for Velocicoaster. they look very similar, and I think they have similar elements. So yeah, this is one that I definitely want to get over to. But again, being the not well-traveled American coaster enthusiast that I am, it'll be a while before I get over there, probably.
Yeah, my first one was Batman at Six Flags Great America outside of Chicago. Really was impressed at that time, back in that, when that came out, just the attention to detail, the theming of, to it. So really loved that when it first came out. But then in the later years, the Incredible Hulk, just like you, I mean, I thought that was amazing. I like the original better too. So those would be the two that come to mind for me, just because one was the first one that I did of the superheroes, and then the other one just because I really loved the ride experience that I had on the Incredible Hulk.
I mean, it defined a superhero, because I could say Flying Ace Aerial Chase because Snoopy's my hero.
There you go.
But I haven't been to a lot of Six Flags parks, so I don't feel like I have that economy of DC character rides to work with. You mentioned Guardians of the Galaxy. I mean, now I've never seen those movies either. I'm not a big movie watcher at all, and I've never seen an MCU movie at all. Okay, full disclosure, because someone's going to call me on it. I saw Captain Marvel in like 2002 when that came out. That doesn't mean I can't appreciate the experience. As far as like superheroes are concerned, you could also say Hagrid's Magical Motorbike Adventure too.
It's true.
I mean, just because Harry Potter's a kid doesn't mean he's not a superhero. Like, let's not cross that line here. But yeah, I would say that one as far as like superhero rides are concerned. And then as far as the ride experience, I almost want to say that Guardians is the better ride experience of the two. Actually,
it's hard to beat that.
I want to go out and say that Guardians is the best ride experience of the two. But yeah, that's a very interesting question, and it's weird to limit it down to like, what's your favorite superhero ride? And if without Six Flags, we wouldn't have too many options, But let me ask you this. This is something that Don and I have debated on and off camera, because this is going to be very interesting looking forward. So that Mattel Adventure Park is slated to open in Kansas City. How do you think that's going to affect Worlds of Fun?
Okay. So I was doing my research, as one does before appearing on a podcast. It is actually not in Kansas City proper. It is, they say it's in Kansas City, Kansas, which is, I had it on Google Maps. It's actually in a city in Kansas that I had never heard of before. That's 30 minutes outside of the city. So if this is one of these, I appreciate the trend we're kind of having with these micro parks popping up, your Peppa Pig, the Mattel Adventure Park, whatever Universal is doing in Texas, Universal Kids Park, I think is what it's called. I love these micro parks because they're great half-day experiences, great for families. Is it going to affect Worlds of Fun? Probably not. And having been to Worlds of Fun, that's a park, again, a lot of character, because it's got that kind of Jules Verne around the world in 80 days theme to it. Will it cause the parent company, whatever the parent company is calling itself at that given time when this Mattel park is built, will it cause them to maybe put a little bit more focus on the Kansas City market? Maybe. But it's not, it's never been super reactionary. Every time Disneyland builds something, Knott's isn't necessarily going to build a ride. Or every time Busch Gardens Williamsburg does something, King's Dominion, which is about an hour away, they're not going to necessarily retaliate. So Busch Gardens will just put up the billboard literally right before you get to King's Dominion. And it's like on 95 right there by the park. That's their way of retaliating. So I'm excited for this to come to Kansas City. Again, more new roller coasters, always a good thing in my opinion. But I really don't think it's gonna scratch, put any dent in Worlds of Fun anyway, in one way or another, just because I think Worlds of Fun, they've got a really, really great Halloween haunt. They've got a great coaster collection. I've yet to ride Zambezi's Zinger, but I've heard good and not so good things. But it's one of those I want to ride it just because it is one, it's new to me, but two, it just looks fun and it looks entertaining. And I think what GCI and Skyline Attractions have done with that what is their steel track? It's
Titan
not
track.
Titan track. I get the two confused.
Yeah,
but
I do too.
the Titan track, it looks like a very fun experience, and I think Zambezi Zinger, it to me reminds me a little bit of Invader or Mystic Timbers, kind of that smaller scale wooden coaster, not necessarily a family wooden coaster, but something that packs a big punch in a small package. And I think, it's not really necessarily fair to put Mystic Timbers in that same conversation, but when you've got the Beast and the Racer on the other side of the park, it's kind of small a little bit by comparison. But so to answer your question, I don't think this puts any sort of dent in Worlds of Fun negatively. If anything, it's like, maybe the Kansas City Metro is growing to the point where we should pay attention to this. If parks are going to continue to expand here, what can we do to compete? So maybe it's not the first strip of the leak, but maybe the leak will eventually, the faucet will turn open, if that makes sense.
Okay. Now, what do you think would be another city that would be a good fit for a Mattel Adventure Park?
Well, Don, you and I, we've had this conversation. I know you spent some time in North Carolina, and you said Greensboro when we had this conversation on social media. I don't think Greensboro is the answer. I will say the triangle, the Raleigh-Durham Chapel Hill triangle, that would be great. They just got their first coaster in years at the Frankie's Fun Park in Raleigh, so they can at least support one coaster. And there is a good like crop of people in that area. I tried to go to Frankie's a couple of weeks ago on the weekend. I couldn't find a parking space, and it happened to be because it was like the first 70-degree day and there were blue skies. But I think any kind of mini major metro, like not like the biggest city or biggest like tourist place, but Raleigh is, got an international airport. They've got 3 major college campuses right there. There's a lot of industry in that park, or part of the state. Like, I think Raleigh would be a good location. If I want to take my North Carolina hat off, I really think Myrtle Beach deserves the second shake at a theme park, because Hard Rock Park opened
I agree.
The world's worst economic time possible, which is why it lasted 2 years, that and whatever management was going on there. But I think with these branded theme park attractions like Mattel, Barbie prints money right now, given the success of the feature film, and the coasters, the Hot Wheels coasters, everybody loved playing with Hot Wheels when they were kids. And the fact that the coaster has orange track, like, that's just chef's kiss. But I think Myrtle Beach could probably support it. I bet the Pigeon Forge Gatlinburg area could support it. And I think, honestly, well, Kansas City's getting in one, so Branson probably not. But any of those, like, and another one, Wisconsin Dells. I think these high traffic tourist destinations where people are going for fun and for fun reasons, I think if you can just plug and play these small half-day experience, so you can still, go to the beach, or you can go to a water park, or you can go, hike in the Smokies, I think it's just a perfect tourist destination park.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to bring this up just because I was so impressed, and it took me a second to find this for some reason. But, when we're talking about the Mattel park, let me just show the terrain. This is from IAPA of 2022. You talk about a giant size Matchbox car. Like, how cool is that? If you're an audio listener, you're missing out. But Google Mattel. What did I Google? Mattel coaster with Hot Wheels.
Yes.
And then they had the car on display, but it's a very, very good looking car. But Andrew, thank you so much for being on the show. We always have, it's a real pleasure having you on. You're our first three-peat guest. We were talking about that before we went live. So you're officially a friend of the show. You sent me a hat, so you're okay in my book with that regard. We're squared up with that. Just one last time, especially for the audio listeners, your website and your podcast. Where can we find it?
You, if you're listening, or actually if you're watching, and I think this caption will say it. Let's see. Here's my finger. It's like right there. Coaster101.com. So Coaster101.com. We're also on all of the social medias at Coaster101, and the ones we're not on, we're trying to get on. So Threads, one day it'll happen.
Maybe.
But Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. We're again still trying to figure out TikTok. We're mostly all elder millennials at this point, and we're just like, what do we do here? Who wants to watch us? But the podcast is the Coaster 101 podcast. Again, you can find that on Coaster101.com or anywhere you find your podcast. We currently have an audio only version on YouTube. Don and Ryan were trying to convince me to go on StreamYard to do a video version. So if you like the sound of my voice and you're like, what does that guy look like? One, that's a weird question to ask. Don't ask that again. But one day we might go video. But for now, audio only. We've had just about 160 episodes so far. And we're going to come back with some exciting ones. It's been tough. Real life has been a kick in the teeth recently, but I think once we can get some time, it's going to be kicking again. So, but
awesome. Yeah. Well, thanks again, Andrew. Remember, Coaster101.com. That's where you can find them on all the socials. Coaster101 on all the socials, and Coaster101.com to check out his website. And it's awesome. I was catching up with it before we recorded for context, obviously. And you have some fantastic articles, and many of which we mentioned today. But thanks again, Andrew. You'll be our first three-peat too, I'm sure.
I hope so. One day.
Absolutely. Stick around, everybody. We got the Pick Six coming up next.